What's up, you guys? This is Reasonable Doubt, season 3, episode. Lord, my hair. Episode 7, 6, 6. Um, I think it's 6. I'll make sure it's right. But so we are. This episode really dealt. This is episode 7. So anyway, but this episode really dealt more with Jax's relationship with her mom, her dad. We got some flashbacks. We're dealing with her mom's cancer. So there wasn't a lot of movement on the case, but this was a really, really good episode. I really love the way this episode was written. It was good. Some great acting in this episode. So what we had um the Jax talking to her dad and her husband because we left off with her just finding out her mom had cancer. We found out that she's diagnosed with stage 2 um prostate cancer, colon cancer. Um and of course she's upset. Like I would be upset if my mother didn't tell me, and like my husband and my daddy, who I ain't talked to in 15 years, was the ones who had to tell me. But I also understand after you see how Jax sort of tried to bogart and take over. And her mother was like, see, this is why I ain't tell you nothing. So they convinced Jax to not call her mother that night. But what we find out is that there's also a lot more. Well, not a lot, but there's still another secret that's being kept. There's still something else that they're not telling Jax. And Lewis knows, but he didn't tell Eddie, listen, you need to tell Jax or I'm gonna tell her. So we don't know what this other secret is. We don't find out in this episode, but it's something else that's going on. So we see the next morning, we see Jax go to her mama house and basically was like, so you wasn't gonna tell me? And her mother was like, listen, I wanted to get all of the information. I wanted to get all of the facts before I came to you because I already know how you are. So Jax ends up going to the doctor's appointment with her mom. And basically the doctor is like, listen, we want to do the surgery, but there are some risks because your mom has hypertension and she's older. And Jax is like, well, we're going to get a second opinion. We appreciate you, but we're going to find somebody else. And her mother was like, no, we're not. We're going to do the surgery. He's going to be the one to do it. And it's going to be what it's going to be. And Jax was like, well, why wouldn't you at least want to get a second opinion? She said, see, this is why I didn't want you to know until I'd already done what I was going to do, because I'm going to do this my way. And yes, I get it. You have the money, you have the connections that you can do, you can put in all these different calls and all these different specialists, but I don't want to do all of that. I want to handle it. I want to take care of it. So Jax is not happy about the fact that her mother doesn't want to exhaust all of her other options before settling in on doing this surgery, because she feels like it's risky. She's worried about her mom's other health issues. And, listen, I know a lot of times we take surgery as nonchalant, but every surgery is dangerous, especially if you have other issues and other health conditions involved. So then we start seeing the flashback. So we see the flashback of Jax when she's probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. Her mom and dad are dancing, and then she starts dancing with her dad. And we see how much of a daddy's girl she is, right? So she goes over to her dad's guitar, bass, whatever the instrument is he plays, and she starts messing with it. And he yells at her. He sort of snaps at her, and she gets upset and runs in the other room. We'll come to find out, because that's what his drugs were. So, but what we also found out is that the mama knew he was doing drugs. Probably, he's like he said, it started off casual and it continued to evolve into something more serious. But when we come in on this flashback, he's snorting, he's snorting. And so we see this, and then the next flashback we see Jax at the playground with her friends talking about, y'all want me to show you? Because he said, he ended up apologizing for yelling at her, and he said daddy just needed his good medicine. So then the next flashback we see is her with her friends at the playground. She pulls out a mirror and she starts mimicking like she's snorting something on the mirror. And she was like, yeah, I just need my good medicine. I just need my good medicine. And the mother gets upset because this is the first time that the mother sees She was like, you got our daughter down at the playground mimicking you like she is snorting cocaine down at the playground. Like, hello. So that was the first time we sort of see the mothers realizing, okay, now this is spilling over and it's affecting our day-to-day life. So down at the law offices, Jax is trying to do what she does, keep a brave face, and she's talking to Bill. And you can see something's wrong. And Bill's like, oh, whoa, what's going on? And she ends up telling Bill that her mother has cancer. So he said, well, listen, we can get a continuance. Like, that's something serious. Like, your lead on this case. Because she was trying to tell him, look, the next person that's up is, the doctor. You can talk to the doctor. And Bill was like, no, wait a minute. Like, this is your lead on this case. Your mom is sick. That is where your priority needs to be. We're going to get a continuance. So he convinces her to get the continuance. So then the partner comes in and he was like, well, what's going on with Jax? Like, what's up? And he ends up telling the partner what's happening. The partner's like, oh, well, we don't need to get a continuance. Like, you take over. Like, this is your time. Like, this is your moment. And he was like, yeah, no, I've already convinced her that we need to get a continuance. He was like, yeah, well, we already know that trying to get her to change her mind when she's made up her mind about something. So, all right, fine. Go ahead and argue for the continuance, but you don't want a long one. 2-3 days tops, right? So, Bill realizes that he done got himself deeper and deeper into this whole of playing double agent, so to speak. Because I think he's really starting to like Jax and respect Jax, and he certainly has empathy for what Jax has going on with her mom being sick. So the next thing we see Jax with, they went and got Spencer from school, and she has Naima, and they're like, listen, we promised you guys that we would be honest with you and let you hear things from us. Like, we learned our lesson from how everything went the last time. So we want y'all to know that, grandma's sick. She has cancer, but this is what's happening. This is what's happening. So, of course, they have a whole family moment. And I'm sure that even as scared and upset as the kids were, I feel like, as somebody putting myself in their place, I would have respected that. And that definitely goes a long way to rebuilding the trust and rebuilding that they're realizing that they can sort of trust that you're doing what you said you were going to do. Now, back at the offices, Daniel and Crystal lets Daniel know that she know that he sleeping with the sister, okay? And he was like, what you mean? How did you find out? She was like, I saw y'all down at the courthouse. And so he was like, well, no, I'm working on a lead. Now, I apologize because in the last review, I felt like this whole thing with the reporter really wasn't a big deal. But Daniel sort of put the pieces together. When I say not a big deal, I thought they were setting up for next season. But come to find out that this reporter that the sister was meeting with, somebody was going to write a tell-all book. And then they backed out. And so Daniel's trying to figure out who contacted the attorney. Who contacted the writer, who was going to spill it, and what they was going to spill. But in all reality, I'm not going to say he's chasing windmills. He doesn't really know what he's chasing at this point, because I don't know how much of this is him being jealous or him really feeling like he's got a lead. And Crystal basically tells him that. Crystal like, you could play games, but you really don't have nothing. Like, you acting like you got something, but you really don't. And in the meantime, you are sleeping with a whole witness in the case. I mean, hello. So she tells him, listen, you need to go and find you something. Okay, you need to go find you something. Now Jax is fighting with her daddy. Because, again, she's upset, she's scared, all of those things. But she finds out that her mom has her dad down as her medical power of attorney. And Jax is pissed off because she was like, well, why would she have you down instead of me? Like, you literally just came back around. And he was like, listen, contrary to what you might think, I have been taking care of your mom. I have been looking out for your mom. I love your mom, And she said, well, You know she has a DNR, and you better do it, or I'm gonna sue your ass. Like if something happens, you better respect her wishes, or I will take you to court. But again, she's just acting out. A lot of it is her acting out because she does feel some kind of way about, you know, all of the things with her mom. Like again, you see Jax going through all these emotions. You even see her having flashbacks to the times her and her mom had fights and arguments and stuff like that we've seen over the 3 seasons. So like I said, this was a really, really good episode. So then we see Bill is sleeping with Sally. Like they are full on getting it in, getting it in. And he's the one that actually lets it slip to Sally about Jax's mom, because Jax ain't told none of the girls. She ain't let none of the girls up know. And so she was upset about it because she was like, well, why Jax ain't, you know, Jax ain't tell us what's going on with her mama, you know, and he was like, damn, my bad. I thought you knew. Um, and again, we have a scene where Jax had argued with her mom, but she calls to apologize, and they have a moment, you know. Again, she's really scared, and so she's acting out, and she's being Jax. I mean, we know that Jax can be Jax, right? Now Daniel is still trying to figure out what's going on. What is the connection between what's the connection between the sister and this writer and all of the things. So he turns on her location so he can follow her and know where she's going. He does find that the writer is in her phone, but she's deleted all of their messages. So of course that's suspicious. Like when you're deleting messages after you're talking to somebody, it's a little suspicious, right? So this must be like 6 or 7 months down the road, because Jax is hosting the baby shower for the doctor. And she is like pregnant. And when we first found out she was pregnant, she wasn't really telling nobody. She was like 6 weeks. So, I mean, and we know that a case, you know, this ain't Law and Order where it's like, seem like it's the next day they're in court. So I appreciated they gave us a timeline from that perspective. But Jax is literally having a whole meltdown at the baby shower. Sally lets it slip that she knows about her mama. And Jax was like, wait a minute, how did you find out? And she has to let Jax know, well, you know, me and Bill been sleeping together. And she was like, really? Bill, my colleague Bill, that's what y'all are doing? And Sally was like, look, he going through a divorce. I'm going through a divorce. Like, we just doing what we doing. And she was just kind of side-eyeing the situation like, okay. So she goes to her bedroom to have a cigarette. And is it Chanel? Chanel comes in there and gives her a pep talk. You know, she's like, oh no, not the cigarettes. Like, oh, absolutely not the cigarettes. And she gives her like a whole pep talk, and tells her, listen, you gonna be all right. We gonna be all right. We got your back. You know, you gonna get through this. You know, give her. She's got some good girlfriends. You know, she's definitely got some good girlfriends. Now, we end up seeing like another flashback, because when Jax, y'all know how Jax has that box where she keeps her cigarettes and her special cigarettes. Well, there was a guitar pick in there. So we got the flashback of how she got the guitar pick. And we see where the mama finally put the daddy out, right? He's strung out. She finally put him out. And he comes by the house. Well, one night he's banging on the door and the mama won't let him in. Then he comes by the house one day while Jax is watching her cartoons. He says, you know, I got a surprise for you. So she lets him in. I mean, it's her daddy, you know. She lets him in. He's looking for his stash. So he ends up getting high and he ends up overdosing while Jax is in the living room watching her cartoons. Mama comes home from the grocery store, finds him laid out in the kitchen. She has to call 911, the whole 9 yards. Next thing you know, she is packing up that apartment to get her out of there, probably to hide from him so he can't find them. And she was like, well, daddy said he had a surprise for me. Like, where's my surprise? Because she said, well, daddy's sick. You know, he's going to be gone for a while. So the mama finds the guitar pick he left on the counter. It's got heroin all over because by now he's shooting up on the heroin. So, she finds it, she washes it off and she gives it to Jax and says, hey, you know, your dad left this for you. And she made a whole thing out of it. And so Jax still has this guitar pick. You know what I mean? She still has the guitar pick, right? So now they're down to the hospital, and it's all dramatic. They got Jax at the hospital, the daddy, the husband, mama getting ready to go into surgery. They having their whole final goodbye. They walking real slow down the aisle, taking her mom into the surgery. And the surgery is lasting longer than they expected it to last. So Jax is in she goes into the chapel to pray, and her dad comes in there, and they sort of have a moment, and she says, even with everything else, that pick that you gave me has gotten me through some of my tough times. Every time I thought things were too rough, I would look at that pick and I would always think about you, and it would give me some strength. Baby daddy was like, yeah, I don't know nothing about no pick. That sounds like something your mama did. Um, yeah, I don't know nothing about that. So Jax is kind of like, wait, what? It's like your whole life. Now, I don't know. I think daddy should have let that one roll. I feel like daddy should have let that one roll because she just got finished telling you how important it was to her and how it got her through some tough times. I feel like, now I understand you call yourself wanting to be honest, but I think I would have had to let that lie ride. Because, I mean, who is it hurting at this point? But anyway, he did tell Jax. Now, while this is going on, Daniel done followed the sister down to the hospital. She down at the hospital, and he's trying to figure out what she doing in the hospital. She done lied to him and told him a friend of hers got hit by a car, and she came down to the hospital to visit. And he said, well, I'm down here because Jackson's mom had surgery, so, that's what I'm down here for. But she was coming out of ICU, so he dips into ICU. Come to find out who is up in ICU? The drug dealer, the one that testified against Ozzy, the former child actor. Now, remember last week's episode, he had a whole USB that had video footage of Wendy. Looked like Wendy was tied up or something. I couldn't tell if Wendy was smiling or upset. Like, I couldn't tell if she was tied up because she wanted to be or she was tied up because she had to be. I really don't know. But that's who's laid up in that hospital bed. Then Daniel goes to find Jackson, lets Jackson know, hey, listen, old boy is down in ICU and he ain't looking too good. So as Jax and Daniel head down to ICU to try to talk to him and find out what happened, baby, he dies. Okay, he flatlines. And then we see the sister on her phone talking about, yeah, he's beat up really bad. He's probably not going to make it through the night, which means he can't talk no more. Now, so somebody that messed around and unalive this witness who had some, because when he testified, he ain't tell everything he could tell, okay? He did not tell everything he could tell, but he told enough, and they were nervous because he was blackmailing the family. Now, I don't know who in the family then took care of it, but somebody did, okay? And the sister knows a lot more than what she's telling Daniel. But as far as the mama is concerned, she did come out of her surgery. The doctor said that the surgery lasted longer than they expected because of her hypertension. But she did come out of the surgery. We saw the family happy and rejoicing. Now, the one thing she did promise Jax was that she would come to Jax's house to recover after the surgery, which brings me back to the scene they keep showing us that somebody is laid out on that floor and Jax is crying and upset from the beginning of the first scene of the season. So at first I thought maybe it was the daughter, maybe she had hurt herself, but now I'm wondering if it's mama, that she was at the house recovering and maybe something happened after the surgery. Either way, it looks like it's going to be a rough couple of episodes as it relates to Jax and her family, because the daddy's still holding on to a secret that he ain't said nothing about. Okay. So it definitely looks like it's going to be some rough. We have 10 episodes altogether. This is episode 7. So we got 3 more episodes to get through. Baby. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. That's the episode. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.